Imagine you're found at a crime scene, kneeling over a dying man, covered in his blood. You were trying to save him, but to the police, you're the killer. This is the nightmare Thabo Makona found himself in. Handcuffed, exhausted, and bruised, he sits in a cold police station. An officer slaps a photo on the table, the damning image of him at the scene. Caught red-handed, the officer sneers. Thabo's voice is barely a whisper. I was trying to save him, but no one is listening. This is just the beginning of a 5-month ordeal that will test the very limits of his spirit. The story begins not with a bang, but with the chilling silence of a courtroom. Thabo stands alone, a solitary figure in a system designed to crush him. He has no lawyer, no money, no support. The judge, already annoyed, peers down from his bench. Mr. Makona, where's your legal representation? Thabo's honest answer, I couldn't afford one, Your Honor, sends ripples of judgment through the room. He sees it all, the distrustful jury, the shame in his own family's eyes, and the confident smirk of the prosecutor who sees an easy win. The prosecutor lays out the facts. Thabo at the scene, covered in blood, holding the victim. The case seems open and shut. For Thabo, the weight of their assumptions feels like a physical force, pressing down on him, suffocating him. He is already convicted in their minds. Then, the montage of misery begins. 5 months in chains, both literal and metaphorical. His life becomes a grueling routine of survival and self-education. By the dim light of his prison cell, he pores over thick law books, trying to learn in weeks what lawyers spend years mastering. He scribbles notes on scraps of paper, his only weapon against a powerful state. During the day, he endures the mockery of other inmates who see his attempts at self-representation as a fool's errand. The isolation deepens as his family stops visiting, their shame too great to bear. In court, his every effort is met with disdain. The judge cuts him off, the jury rolls their eyes, and the prosecutor's smirk never fades. Through it all, a voiceover from Thabo captures his lonely battle. 5 months, no lawyer, no support, just me, and the truth no one wanted to hear. What is that truth? We flash back to the night of the murder. The rain is pouring down, washing over a grim scene in a dark alley. Thabo is on his knees, not attacking, but pleading. He cradles a man named Sifo, who is bleeding heavily. Stay with me, please. Help is coming, Thabo begs, his own voice choked with desperation as he presses his hands to the wound. He can hear sirens in the distance, a sound that should bring hope, but for him, it will bring only damnation. In those final, frantic moments, Sifo dies in his arms. The sirens get closer, and the red and blue lights paint the alley, freezing Thabo in a blow of guilt he didn't earn. This is the memory that fuels him, the truth that keeps him fighting when everyone else has given up. While Thabo fights his lonely battle in court, a new player enters the game. Detective Lina Kumalo, a sharp-eyed investigator with a reputation for being relentless, revisits the crime scene. She's not satisfied with the easy answers. She walks the alley, her gaze sweeping over every detail her colleagues missed. She crouches down, and her instincts scream that something is wrong. Then she sees it, a small, almost invisible glint of metal embedded in the brick wall. A tiny shard, insignificant to anyone else, but to Detective Kumalo, it's a loose thread in a story that's been too neatly woven. That wasn't in the report, she mutters to herself. This single, overlooked piece of metal is about to change everything. Back in the courtroom, during the 3rd month of his trial, Thabo is on the attack. Awkwardly, but with a raw determination, he cross-examines a witness for the prosecution. You said I attacked the victim, Thabo challenges, his voice gaining strength. Yet there were no defensive wounds on me. How do you explain that? For a fleeting moment, the witness hesitates, caught off guard. The prosecutor jumps to his feet. Objection. The judge, without a second thought, sustains it. Move on, Mr. Makona, he says, his tone dripping with dismissal. Thabo's shoulders slump in frustration. But he isn't the only one who noticed the witness's hesitation. From the back of the courtroom, Detective Kumalo watches, her suspicion growing stronger. She sees what the judge and jury refuse to, a man fighting desperately for truth. They do want to see. Driven by her gut feeling, Detective Kumalo dives into the police archives. She spends hours surrounded by dusty files, pulling old photos, autopsy reports, and ballistics data. She's searching for the one piece that doesn't fit. And then, she finds it, the metal shard from the alley wall. She runs a test, and the result makes her eyes widen. It's a match to a rare, specialized handgun model. This isn't just a random piece of debris. It's a direct link to a weapon that was never recovered, a weapon that doesn't belong to Thabo. Her investigation just took a sharp turn, and she knows she's on the trail of the real killer. The neat story the prosecution has been selling is about to completely unravel. For the first time, Thabo has a visitor who isn't family. He sits across from Detective Khumalo in the sterile prison visitation room, his guard up. "If you're here to tell me to confess, save it," he says, his voice flat and weary. But Khumalo's response floors him. "I don't think you did it." Thabo freezes, the words hanging in the air. For 5 long months, he has been completely alone in his belief. "You're the first person who's said that," he replies, a crack in his hardened exterior. Khumalo leans forward. "Something about that scene didn't add up," she explains. "And now, I think I know why." She slides a photo across the table, a photo of the rare handgun, a photo that connects the dots in a way no one else could. For the first time in a very long time, Thabo feels a flicker of hope. The day of closing arguments arrives. Month 5. The tension in the courtroom is thick enough to choke on. The prosecutor delivers a final, polished performance, painting Thabo as a desperate man looking for sympathy. Evidence doesn't lie, he declares, gesturing toward Thabo. Then, it's Thabo's turn. The judge gives him a look that says, "Get this over with." Thabo steps forward. His hands are shaking, but his voice is steady, filled with the conviction of his truth. "I stood in blood because I tried to save a life," he begins. "I stayed when I could have run. I told the truth when it cost me everything. I may not have had a lawyer or a family behind me, but I had one thing: truth." The room is silent, captivated by his raw honesty. And just then, the courtroom doors burst open. Detective Khumalo strides in, her voice ringing with authority. "Your Honor, I submit newly discovered evidence." The room erupts in gasps. The prosecutor's face goes pale as images flash onto the courtroom screens. The metal shard, the rare gun it came from, a new suspect, a known associate of the victim with a history of violence. And finally, the smoking gun. Phone records placing this new suspect at the crime scene at the exact time of the murder. Khumalo turns to the stunned courtroom. The accused was not the attacker, she announces. He was the only one who tried to help. The judge leans back, visibly shaken. The jury members exchange wide-eyed looks, the certainty on their faces replaced with shock and dawning horror. The truth, buried for 5 months, has finally been unearthed. A short time later, the verdict is delivered. The judge looks at Thabo, his earlier dismissiveness gone, replaced by something resembling respect. In light of the new evidence, he declares, his voice echoing in the silent room, "This court finds the defendant." He pauses, and the entire room holds its breath. "Not guilty." The words hit Thabo like a physical blow. His knees buckle, and he collapses into his chair, tears of relief, exhaustion, and vindication streaming down his face. Across the room, his family looks away, their faces a mask of shame, not for him, but for their own lack of faith. Detective Khumalo gives him a small, respectful nod. She didn't just find evidence, she restored a man's life. Thabo Makona steps out of the courthouse and into the bright sunlight. For the first time in 5 agonizing months, he feels its warmth on his face, not through a barred window, but as a free man. He takes a deep, cleansing breath, the air of freedom filling his lungs. His voiceover gives us the final, powerful lesson of his journey. "They thought 5 months would break me. They thought standing alone meant I was guilty. But truth doesn't need numbers. It needs courage." With his head held high, Thabo Makona walks forward into his new life, a testament to the fact that sometimes the strongest defense isn't an army of lawyers, but the unwavering courage to hold onto your truth, even when you're all alone. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more content that explores the power of the human spirit. See you next time.